Hello, all of you coaches, consultants, and expertpreneurs, part of the Female Fearless and Financially Flourishing Facebook group. I'm Laura Renner, and I'm excited to be a part of this today as your expert panel. I'll be talking about how to let go of things that you're afraid to let go of, or you feel that other people won't do it as well as you. Some people call that being a control freak. And we'll be talking about how to let go of those things, or how to use a VA when you face that question or that belief that no one can do it as well as you, and how do we address that. I hope that you are enjoying these expert panel videos and that you're getting a lot out of them. They've been quite valuable for me as well, learning about all the different ways to run my business, from mindset to money and everything in between. And so I hope that you are getting as much out of it as much as I am. And so, today we're going to talk about how to let go, or how to rely on a VA when you believe, or you're afraid that no one can do it as well as you. So I'll just say, for the purposes of my Facebook Lives, when I say delegate or outsource, I'm basically referring to the same thing. And so you might delegate to your VA, which in the purposes of our conversations is the same thing as outsourcing to a VA. They do have different definitions elsewhere, but for the purposes of my conversations on this expert panel, I will use them interchangeably. So, how do you use a VA or delegate to a VA when you don't believe that anyone can do it as well as you? Well, we're going to talk about that in detail today. And if anyone wants to share a specific task that they're having trouble letting go of, we can dissect it live on the spot. Okay, so the first thing I want you to ask yourself, I was actually reading a book this morning or yesterday on healthy eating. And one of the things they were talking about in that particular chapter was stress, and how stress leads to eating, and eating leads to stress, and things like that. And one of the things they talked about was if you're so busy at home or whatnot, you have to ask your family to get involved as a way to eat healthier, or to manage stress so that you can eat healthier. And one of the questions that they suggested that we ask ourselves is, what am I getting out of letting things go on the way they are? And I thought that's so pertinent to our businesses as well, and to outsourcing and delegating in our businesses. What are you getting out of letting things go on the way they are? I've heard this phrase, and I like to use it, we all have a zone of genius. And what we're doing in our business is our zone of genius. But you can't be a genius at everything, right? And so you can't do everything better than everyone else in your business, if that makes sense. I always like to quip when people, that quote, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I'm like, okay, yeah, I love my business. I don't love email. I don't love marketing. I don't love scheduling meetings and things like that. And so I love what I do, but I don't love all aspects of my business, of what needs to be done in my business. And so when you think about it that way, in the sense of, what are you getting out of letting things go on the way they are? So by insisting that you're a genius at everything, which is impossible, and by doing everything yourself, what are you getting out of that? You're potentially limiting the growth of your business, or at the very least, you're being busier than you need to be, or that you could be. And so, think about that from a mindset perspective of, is it really worth it to do everything? And so maybe it's not that no one can do it as well as you. Maybe it's no one can do it the way you want them to, right? And so if no one can do it the way you want them to, how do you change that? How do you get them to do it the way you want them to? And we're going to talk about that in a minute, so stay tuned. All right, so now let's say, okay, all right, I'm open to this idea of letting something go so that I can have more time, or I can be in my zone of genius more. Like if you're a coach and you just want to be on the phone with clients and helping them break through their own barriers or whatnot. And then, so then doing your formatting of your newsletter takes away from that. And so how do you let go? How do you let someone else take that on for you? So what I want you to think about is come up with a task right now. Think about a task in your mind. Think of something that you'd like to get off your plate. Okay? Don't worry about how long it takes. So like if you thought, oh, formatting my newsletter. Oh, well, that only takes 5 minutes, or that only takes a half hour. Don't think about it like that, okay, for the purpose of this exercise. So don't worry about how long it takes, and don't worry about how important it is. You know, some people might think that client intake forms are something that only I can do. I can't let someone else talk to my clients. They know me, they would feel weird talking to another person. Or in my case, probably the last thing I would let go of is invoicing, right? You've probably heard me say that before on previous videos, but there are some of our clients who that's the very first thing they let go of. So for the purpose of this right now, don't worry about how important it is, okay? But think about something you want to get off your plate, not thinking about the time it takes to do it and not thinking about how important it is. Rather, think about how much energy it takes to do it, or how much energy it takes to even think about. You know, my last live, I mentioned an example of cooking versus washing the dishes, right? So let's say you prefer cooking, you enjoy cooking, you get a lot of thrill from it, and it's calming for you, and it's exciting for you, and couldn't really care less about doing the dishes. And so for the purposes of this exercise, let's assume that cooking that meal and cleaning up afterward takes the same amount of time. In that case, which one costs you more energy? Which one takes more energy for you to complete? The cleaning up, right? Because you enjoy the cooking, you don't really enjoy the cleaning up. So it costs you more energy to clean up than it does to cook, okay? To cook your favorite meal or something like that. So think about it from that perspective. What is a business task or even a personal task that you would like to get off your plate that takes up a lot of energy, more energy than it's worth, right? Not worrying about time, not worrying about importance of the task, rather what takes up a lot of your energy and what takes up a lot of brain space, okay? Think about that. So what has been on your to-do list for a while, at the bottom of your to-do list? Like it never really works its way up. It just stays there at the bottom, and it drives you nuts because you just can't get it off your list, yet you don't have time to get to it. I was talking to someone the other day who mentioned that he has a stack of business cards and he would really like to get them uploaded into his CRM. And that just sits at the bottom of his to-do list. And every day he's like, oh, I have these other things to do. They're more a priority because they're going to grow my business, or I need to address my clients. And so that's just going to stay down there, and it just stays down there. But think about how much does that drive you nuts? Does that just drive you nuts that it sits there and it just never goes away and it just stays at the bottom? It doesn't work its way up. Maybe eventually you just give up and you throw those business cards away, or you take it off your to-do list and you throw the business cards in a shelf, in a drawer, and you'll never find them again. And so then it's kind of like, now it's taking up physical space, right? So think about one task like that. What is that one task that takes up that energy, takes up that brain space, and never gets off your to-do list, but never works its way up to the top? Maybe even look at your to-do list right now to figure that out. All right, now that you have that task in mind, think about what are your concerns about having someone else take it on for you. So using that example of business cards, are you really afraid that someone can't enter business card information into an Excel sheet correctly? Like, you know, it's possible they'll transfix phone numbers. Maybe they'll even, you know, mix up a name with the right email address or whatnot. And I mean, there are software out there to scan business cards. But there are ways to prevent someone from making those mistakes or allowing you to check that. For instance, you could use an app where you take a photo of the card and then your VA goes in and logs into the website to edit all the information to make sure it's correct. So that way you still have a photo of the card, but then you also aren't spending time editing all the scanned information. So just ideas like that. But it's like, really, do you really think you can't find someone who could do that as well as you? And if they are mistakes, one, chances are you would make a mistake too, right? If you got hundreds of cards that you're going to enter into an Excel spreadsheet, so chances are any of us would transfix numbers or skip a line or something like that, because when you have that many cards, it's bound to happen. But two, like, is it really worth the energy and the brain space and that nagging on the to-do list to not have someone else do it for you? But just think about it, like, what are your concerns? And if you're willing to share, post them in the comments about what your concerns are about having someone else doing it. Is it maybe just overwhelming the sense of, okay, how would I get them the cards? And how long would it take them? And then once they have it, what would I do with it? And what about the next stack of cards? And so if that's overwhelming, then we can talk about that as well. Like, how do you address that? And that's when we use what I call a set it and forget it system, which we've talked about in previous videos. But let's say, a task that's maybe a little more complicated than entering business card information into a spreadsheet or a CRM or editing it into a card scanner or something like that. Let's say it's a little more complicated task. I don't know where this came from, because when you Google it, there's several sources of it. So I guess it just seems maybe it's common, readily available business knowledge. But there tends to be 5 categories for delegation in business, and they're different levels, if you will. So level 1 is do exactly what I ask. All right. And that is the example of the business cards going into an Excel sheet or whatnot. That's exactly what you want them to do. There's not a lot of thinking involved, and that's, it just takes time to get it done. The next level is gather information. So that might be research, looking at finding out different pieces of information that you might need. But the thing is you still want to decide what decision, or make the decision, and then maybe you'll have your VA enact that decision. But the fact of the matter is you just want to know the information so that you can make a decision. One level up from that is they do the research, they gather the information, but now they make recommendations. Maybe they list pros and cons. Like, if you fly out on this date, here are the pros, here are the cons. Or if you pursue this marketing software, here are the pros, here are the cons. And I recommend you go with product X, or you go with flight B, or something like that. And so they make a recommendation, and you can say, yes, now go do it, go book that flight, or go purchase that software and get us set up. Or you say, no, I don't like either one of those, go back and find me more options, or something like that. So that's level 3. Level 4 is now where they have the power to make a decision. So in that case, it might be, all right, I went ahead and chose flight X for you because I know you prefer afternoon departures, and that way you'll have the evening to rest and before your speaking gig the next day. Or I went ahead with this software for these reasons, or whatnot. And so they're making the decision, and they're keeping you in the loop about the decision they made. And then there's the 5th category, the highest level, and that one is implement, where they're not keeping you in the loop. So they went ahead and booked flight X. They didn't tell you anything about it. You trust them. You have their they have your full support, and they just give you the itinerary, and you're like, here's your flight, or here's the software that we're going with, or something like that. So different tasks, you can use different levels of delegation. An example I can give you is within my own company. I have 2 employees. The first one I hired is an account manager whose role is to stay in contact with our clients, make sure they're satisfied, help them create systems if they're struggling with delegation, address any issues they may have, etc., etc. Now, when I first hired that role, I considered how much experience do I want someone to have? Am I willing to train them on it, or do I want someone who's done this before and can help us take our game to the next level kind of thing? And it occurred to me that I didn't think I was very good at it. And so I didn't want to train someone to do something my way when I didn't think my way was very good. And so in that case, I went with someone who was capable of like a level 4 category of delegation. So that's the make a decision and keep me in the loop. He probably alternates between level 3 and level 4, level 3 being make a recommendation and level 4 being make a decision, but keeps me in the loop. And eventually as we're done with training, he'll get up to level 5. And so, but he's right now, I'd say we went with level 3 or level 4, and that's what I wanted. I wanted someone who could make those decisions and without me having to make them, without me being the bottleneck, if you will. My second employee is what I call an onboarding coordinator, and that's someone who, when we're bringing on a new client, helping them find the right VA and then getting them set up and training their new VA, because no matter how experienced they are, you're gonna have to train your VA. That's all there is to it, right? So when you think about, oh, they're not going to be able to do it as well as me, of course not, because they don't know your systems, they don't know the way you like to do things. So there's always going to be training. And it could be as little as an hour or 15 minutes to as much as 6 months or even longer, depending on the complexity of what you want them to do. And so just know that no one's going to know it right off the bat. And what we do at Freedom Makers is we usually do a live screen share and record it so that our virtual assistants can watch it and reference it without having to take up more of the client's time, because time is what we're trying to save for our clients. And so she coordinates all of that for our new clients. And with her, I already had a system in place and I liked it and I thought it worked well. And so it was more important for me that the person be willing to learn the system that I created and enact it as I wanted them to enact it. So she probably operates more at a level 1 or a level 2, where she does exactly what I ask, and or maybe she does some research, but she won't make any decisions without, or won't implement any decisions unless I make the decision. Now, she's capable of doing more than that, absolutely, right? But that's how I set up that position, as more of a level 1, level 2 type delegation, and the other position is more level 3, level 4. So just something to think about, like if you aren't certain that you can find someone who can do it as well as you, find someone you like and give them level 1 delegation where they need to do it exactly as you ask. As you get more comfortable with them, maybe you can up their levels and increase the type of tasks that require a higher level of delegation. But you can start off with level 1 and with tasks that hang out at the bottom of your to-do list and take up a lot of energy and a lot of brain space. So some other ways to look at how do you let go of this belief that no one can do it as well as you. I don't know what to call it, if it's a fear or a belief, or it doesn't really matter, right? Because in essence, it's potentially not serving you. And not even that doesn't even matter either. If you want to delegate, but you can't get past this thought, then that's what we need to address, right? How do you get past this thought? If you are comfortable with not delegating and that's where you want to stay, that's perfectly fine, or that's your choice, and that's perfectly fine as well. And so, but here are some other ways to look at it, right? You're in business, you are a coach, a consultant, or an expertpreneur. We all are, because we have found that that's our zone of genius, and that's where we thrive. That's where we really are lit up. That's our impact on the world. Everything else that's not in your zone of genius has the potential to be delegated. Everything else that's not in your zone of genius has the potential to be delegated. And And it's just about your comfort level. It's what are you comfortable with delegating? Like I've said in the past, me personally, probably the very last thing I would ever delegate is invoicing. And it's not necessarily because I'm not comfortable with it or whatnot. It's because I have a funky system and I don't right now want to spend time on improving the system to where someone else could do it. Okay? I'll admit it. I will admit it. And but everything else can be delegated as you're comfortable with. Okay? And especially if you think about it, everything that's outside of your zone of genius takes more energy than when you're in your zone of genius. Okay, going back to the cooking versus dishes example. In that example, let's say cooking is your zone of genius. And so it takes more energy to do the dishes or to clean up afterward because it's not your zone of genius. All right, so when you think about it from that perspective, is it worth it, right? Wouldn't you just rather cook all the time or do something else you enjoy? Like, how awesome would that be if every time you went to go cook, all you had to do was cook and magically the kitchen and the dishes would be clean? Like in Hogwarts, right? Just magically clean. How awesome would that be? Okay, and it's possible and you can do it. And the same thing in your business. There are things that you love. And what I've personally learned in the last few weeks or relearned or whatnot is that sometimes if it's our zone of genius and we don't realize it's our zone of genius, we don't see it as work because it's so easy to us. So we don't see it as work, and then the things that aren't in our zone of genius that we dread doing and we put off doing, then we beat ourselves up because we're not doing the work we should be doing to grow our business or to support our clients or whatnot. In reality, it's that we are working. We're just in our zone of genius and we don't realize it. Because it's so easy for us, right? Like, for example, me, I love speaking. Okay, so doing these Facebook Lives is not a lot of energy for me. Okay, but a friend of mine, this would take a lot of energy because she just doesn't enjoy it. But then she has things that she enjoys that would take a lot of energy from me. So that's what I mean. Like, think about what is your zone of genius. Stay in that. Everything else has the potential to be delegated. Also, think about, if you're more of a numbers person, think about what 1 hour of your time is worth. So in this example, let's say that you charge $200 an hour, just as an example. And it takes maybe editing or laying out and formatting and editing your newsletter takes an hour. All right. So when you spend an hour doing all that, you've now potentially lost $200 that you could have been using speaking with a client. There's all different types of numbers you could use, right? Let's say your enrollment conversation usually lasts an hour. So that's one client that you could have potentially enrolled and you didn't because you were formatting your newsletter, editing and formatting your newsletter. So now, a client, what's the lifetime value of your client? $3,000, $10,000, $1,500, like whatever it is. Now, because you spend an hour editing and formatting your newsletter, you've lost out on that revenue. Okay? So maybe you hire a VA, a virtual assistant, to do the new formatting of your newsletter. Okay? And maybe you train them specifically on how you want it done. And you know what? Maybe it takes them 3 hours to do it. Okay? So now you're kind of like, why the hell is it taking them so long? It only takes me an hour. And here they are again. Like, here they are taking 3 hours. If you wanted to, you could go find another VA who could do it faster. Or think about it. Like, say you're paying them $20, $30 an hour. Let's say $30 an hour. So now you've just spent $90 on them. But if you were billing $200, you just made $110. You didn't lose $90, you just made $110. If you had done it yourself, you lost $200, right? But by having someone else do it, even if it took them longer, you made $110. Or if you had an enrollment conversation and you got that client, you've made however much a lifetime value of a client is, less than $90 you spent on a VA. Okay, so even if it takes them longer, you're still coming out ahead because now you're able to spend time in your zone of genius, which is less draining and makes you more money and makes you happier. So that's another way to think about it. And I just want to reiterate and emphasize again that your zone of genius can't be everything. It's just not possible, right? If we had someone whose zone of genius could be everything, they would probably be running the world. And so there are people who have zones of genius that are not your zone of genius. Okay, there are people who thoroughly enjoy formatting a newsletter and it doesn't feel like work to them, just like you helping your clients doesn't feel like work to you. Okay, so just maybe go out on a limb and believe that there is someone who can do it better than you can, or not even better than you can, who enjoys it more than you do. Maybe that's the key there. And then I just want to remind you that relying on the different levels of delegation to help you choose what you can delegate and who you can delegate it to, but most importantly, how you communicate it to them. This helps you to set expectations with them, and part of expectations with the VA, always give a deadline. And so, but you can even send them an article about the 5 types of delegation and say, all right, for this, so that both of you are on the same page as far as language, and you can say, okay, for this task, this is level 1. For this task, this is level 5 or level 4 or whatnot. And then that way, one, it helps you to organize your thoughts on what you're willing to let go of and what your expectations are for their involvement, right? So think about it. If you agree to them or share with you what they're willing and able and where they like to perform. And yeah, so I will leave it there for today. And please leave comments about whether this is useful for you or not, and what questions you might have or thoughts you might have about letting go of tasks so that you can spend more time in your zone of genius. Or as the quote says, like, if you think about what are you getting out of letting things go on the way they are, and if it's, just happy to hear what you have to say about revelations on what you can do to free up the time in your life and your business. Okay, until next time, I look forward to seeing you, and I wish you the best with delegation. Thanks. Bye.